Okay, hi guys, I think I'm live. I'm gonna give it a second to make sure my sound is all good because I'm sure you guys are aware. There's always some sort of issue. Like right now, why is my phone only going sideways? Go ahead and let me know in the chat when you guys can hear me. It hasn't gone live yet on YouTube. I'm over there. Okay, there. I can hear me. Okay, perfect. JMC says that the sound is good and I can hear the sound too. All right, guys, you guys can go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat if you are feeling chatty. Otherwise, we're going to dive in. This is the first time I'm releasing this live. Hi guys, we're live right now on YouTube. I normally just do it on Patreon. Hi, Janelle. Hi, Amanda. I normally just do this over on Patreon and then I release it later through the month. But because I've kind of changed my Patreon setup to be able to accommodate more people as we all navigate all the financial changes that are occurring on a collective scale right now, I kind of changed it to a sliding scale. So really everything is unlocked over there for everybody. I do have higher tiers where, I mail something each month to the abundance tier or the alliance tier. We meet every 3 months for a one-on-one session. So I do still have those. But other than that, all the videos are unlocked. You guys just pay whatever you can afford. I'm not really in it for that, So because Patreon's kind of set up like that now, I thought I would start releasing this over on YouTube. Hi, Spiritual Warrior 333. I'm glad you're here live too. I know it's really late. I have to wait till my kids go to bed, you guys. So that's why we always do it so late. Otherwise, I'm only halfway here. All right, so I am going to head over and share my screen. It's the easiest way, and we're just going to start diving in. Oh, if you are a Patreon member, you have access to the calendar. You can go print that out over through Patreon. It's linked below, along with the apprentice cheat sheet, which by now I really hope you guys have because it's super awesome. I'm going to make my own that has some of these other points on there at some point. Hi, Janelle. Hi, B. Hi, everybody. It's great to have you here. Okay, I am distracted. Okay, I'm going over here, sharing my web screen. Go over here. Okay, so I'm not going to get too far into the thumbnail now because a lot of it we're going to dive into later. What I do want to do is I want to cover the symbolism and the artwork, because when I say, oh, I'm not going to go over the thumbnail now, I always forget to do it. And then when I watch it back, I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't even explain why I spent so long purposefully choosing these pictures, because I do put a lot of thought and time into these thumbnails. I really do look at them as kind of like a sigil. I try to encode it with not just a synopsis of all the words where we're going to go, but imagery as well to, if you can't sit here for several hours and listen to me ramble on about archetypes and the sky and all kinds of things, this is a little synopsis, right? So what we have here up at the top above, our title is a solar eclipse. We are about to enter into eclipse season. We'll be having an eclipse at the end of the month, which actually falls on Beltane, one of the 8 yearly solar holidays. It's actually my dad's birthday. We're going to be diving into what this means later. I have a whole slide for it. But it's at the end of the month, and our eclipse actually falls on that day. So we'll be diving into, what that means. Stick around. It's one of the last couple slides. So you stick around, you'll find out about Beltane. Oh, thank you, Janelle. I take a lot of pride in my thumbnails. I put a lot of time into finding the right imagery. And this is a picture of a bonfire. Oftentimes it's celebrated with big fires or maypoles or even cauldrons, but we'll talk about that later. And when we meet over on Patreon for this video, we will be diving much deeper into all of the cultural and historical connections to Beltane, as well as eclipses. So if you want to join Patreon and dive into the rabbit hole a little bit deeper, there is a link below. This is a picture of the Andromeda galaxy, which our sun will actually align with this month. All of our personal planets will, along with some pretty interesting asteroids, but we'll get into that when we get into the chart. And our Libra moon will actually be exactly conjunct the center of the Andromeda galaxy, the black hole at the center. So this is a really great picture. It also shows M33, which if you followed my work for a while, you may have heard me refer to Andromeda as our divine partner, and we'll get into why as we go along here, and M33 as the divine child. And so we'll be talking about the union that occurs between those archetypes and ourself. Like I said, it's eclipse season. This is a picture of Jupiter and Neptune. We will be experiencing the long-awaited Jupiter-Neptune conjunction this month. Will be on April 12th. This is the key energy of the whole year. This is what all these astrologers are talking about. This is the big one, and we've been really building up to it. So we'll be diving into that here as we go, but this is that influx of mysticism that I've been talking so much about. And then over here, this is a picture of Andromeda and Perseus, which represent those divine partners that I was speaking of briefly earlier. I said I wasn't going to go over this, but I guess we're just going to do it. I'm going to go ahead and read this, and then we'll explain it as we go, because I guess we're already here. So our sun aligns with the Andromeda galaxy this month. It's eclipse season, and we have that long-awaited Jupiter-Neptune conjunction. The underlying, esoteric, archetypal energy of the month is this concept of primordial union. And we'll get into why I chose the word primordial as we go along. This spark of life that is Aries, that is spring, that is eclipse season, and the Neptune-Jupiter conjunction. So many things are really giving birth and creative potential right now. We have some conflicting things, but you guys know me. I always try to find a silver lining, and I have some. So, I know a lot of people are zeroing in on some of the squares going on right now as making us stuck, but I don't see it that way. So we'll get there. The energy of the animal, I actually pulled an archetype card we'll dive into later, and it was the animal. We actually pulled the same card on Books and Buds when we were reading the second half of the foretelling. And so I guess this archetype is still very prevalent, and it really is during Aries season, during the beginning, when we are this baby animal that really needs to grow and evolve its consciousness. The shadow of spirit, Beltane and the flames of consciousness, this spark of mind, the spark of the masculine polarity, very much so. Individuation, the developing of the individual, while simultaneously being presented with our polarity. We're going to have a huge focus on our self-work and self-worth, particularly once we enter into Taurus season and eclipse season. And the awakening of the mind, body, and soul. This is a long-awaited flood of fate and mystic insights, but also the casting of a spell. So we need to be really kind of aware that while this Neptune-Jupiter conjunction is going to be prime time for creating our vision and really tapping into expanded creativity and mysticism, it's also prime spell casting energy, which is, great for us, but also great for those painting the illusion, which these signs in the house these planets and the sign that they are in very much govern. So, like I've been saying all year and will continue to say, we are in a waking dream. Like, everything is not as it seems. So, it took Alice a while to figure that out. And when she did, the illusion started to shatter and she started to gain control of what was happening. Like, let's not wait too long. Let's just keep that in the forefront of our consciousness that, like, things are not as they seem right now. And then we're going to be diving into the mythology of Attica and how that archetype is aspecting the sky, the rebirth of the hero of the labyrinth. So if you are a Patreon member, these concepts are going to be much more familiar to you because these are things that we've been covering. Those of you on YouTube, and it might be a little out there, but those of you who've been following my work on Patreon, we're going to be bringing up some of the archetypes that we've discussed previously. They are, shown back up. And then, destiny is here. It's taking the reins and collisions are imminent. Eclipse season, always, we just hand the reins over to like fate and destiny. And no matter how hard we try to go against what is meant for us, things just fall away. And it can get chaotic, but that chaos is always propelling us in the direction that we're supposed to be going. Like my kid who's supposed to be going to bed, but I can hear in the hallway. Okay, so like I said, those of you over on Patreon have this linked below. Go ahead and print it out. Those of you here on YouTube, you can go ahead and take a screenshot, but I know the resolution is better over there. We're going to dive into this whole thing as we go into the chart, so I'm not going to get into it now. I'm just going to point out over here is our color code. I added a little like inquiry here, some questions to ask ourselves as we dive into like the archetypal dance that is this month. We're going to be seeing a lot of the same things coming up, but in different configurations. And these concepts that we've previously discussed, we're constantly going to be looking at from different angles. And the goal is to somehow see all of this here within yourself. So having your chart in front of you is really going to help you to understand how you are embodying any of the things that I talk about here. So if I'm talking about, let's say, the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction happening in Pisces, you're going to want to look at your chart and you're going to want to be like, where is Pisces for me? What house is this in? Do I have any planets there? That is the area of my life that is being affected by whatever it is Allie's yammering on about. Same thing goes for any other sign. If I talk about the eclipse in Taurus, you're going to want to be like, okay, where is Taurus? And what house is this happening in? This is going to help you to find ways to see these archetypes within yourself, because the goal is to kind of see everything that I'm discussing as within you. That is how we travel this path of individuation and develop the individual. And in developing the individual, we ultimately return to the one, because they are one and the same, right? And it's all about integrating all of these fractals of source, which are all just manifestations of divinity, really. So can you see these archetypes within yourself? As I'm going forward here and I'm talking, I want you to ask this to you. And then how can you embody each of these in their purest, most evolved form? And those of you over on Patreon, you've seen how for each moon video, I have dove so deep into the mythology and the historical ancient connections to each sign. And we see how the basic, like traditional Western Greek mythology based understandings of these signs are very limited. But when we really dive in and expand our lens upon each of these archetypes, we really get more plugged into these original connections to source. So how how are we limiting ourselves with the lenses that we place upon planetary archetypes, signs, aspects? For example, right, today's the 5th as we meet. You guys, I needed to recover after that moon. I know I'm a little late here. We also had this on the 1st. The sun was conjunct Chiron. My chart is so aspected right now. It's ridiculous. I've been really trying to work with both of the planets that are strongly aspecting our chart right now. And that is the Mars conjunct Saturn. So, for example, as I'm talking about how we can embody each of these in their purest, highest form, this is a really good example. A lot of astrologers are discussing this conjunction in a very negative and like defeating light. And, you know, I haven't really been doing too many written posts over on Instagram right now because I'm just so shadow banned. It's just really not even worth it to write these long things and put my heart and soul into them. And then, you know, the algorithm just is like, yeah, no. So I've been kind of focusing more on these videos, right? So I haven't really been over there. So I haven't really been able to give my 2 cents yet on this, but I am here to do it. And I was really relieved to see Heather. You guys know I'm a big fan of her work over at Astrology with Heather. Say something kind of similar, that many astrologers are referring to this transit that we're kind of in the middle of right now. It's also square our nodes, which is our point of the eclipses. So the nodes are where we're going next, right? But not yet, right? And Mars is what many astrologers refer to as our like gas pedal, while Saturn is our brake. Mars is our drive and how we take action. And Saturn is how we are restricted or limited, but often in order to take proper action so that we can build something that's sustainable. If Mars is left to just do whatever he wants, which is what he wants to do right now during Aries season, we're going to make so many fucking mistakes. Trust me, I know I've been making several here over the coming days. But when Saturn can come by and just reel him back just a little, we can actually make proper decisions with both of these archetypes together. So really, ideally, it is beneficial. And I'm also really looking at this as an opportunity to kind of kick back in order to let the vision manifest this month, because we have this Neptune-Jupiter conjunction that is really trying to stay deep in those mystical, creative, imaginative realms so that some sort of like deeply magical vision can be birthed from the abyss of our creative potential. And so we really do need to retreat for this. And so I'm looking at it as more of a harmonious transit. But that's an example of how can we, for every single thing, no matter how dark or negative or challenging it may be, whether it's in your natal chart or as we're talking or you hear other astrologers talk about things, I always try to flip it around. But how can I embody these from a evolved perspective? Okay, so we're going to dive into this as we go. I just do want to point out a couple of the things that I have started doing over here. JC says that they agree. I don't know what you are. I agree. I miss your post, but it's disgusting the traffic the AI affords you. That was a great explanation. Thank you so much. Yeah, I've been doing just memes lately because it seems like people also kind of don't really get my posts as much, and they're just like, oh, that meme was funny. I'm just like, yeah, whatever, it's easier. I'll just give you people memes for right now. Besides, Pisces season always takes me a bunch of places. I'm like working my way back to reality right now very slowly. The mystical realm kind of like consumes me. Okay, so this is a key to our madness. These are the color codes. This is, if you guys watched my last monthly video, I talked about how we have the constellations that it is the season of, that the sun is in. So this month it's going to be Aries and Taurus. And then we have the constellations that we can actually see at night. And I talked about how, the ancients during times of year, when they're sitting around the campfire telling stories, the stories they're talking about are the stars that they can see. And so I've been really trying to incorporate those. And I have a really great book that does, and I have some screenshots that we're going to dive into. But these are the constellations that are seen most right now. The blue ones at the bottom are those lunar transits. So this is the moon's transit through a sidereal month as it makes points with key fixed stars. Not all fixed stars, because, it goes through the whole thing. I have to kind of pick the ones that are the archetypes I'm most familiar with and can explain to you guys. And so this is the moon through sidereal month, and then we pair that with the sun through a tropical year, and that's something that we've been doing over here, and these are the other transits. Is there anything else I want to tell you guys? The pink ones are live streams, and yeah, I think we're good. Okay, so this is that book I was telling you guys about. I found it at Salvation Army, and it's like literally what I was looking for. I love this book. It's so good. We're actually going to be diving into the to the chapter on black holes for the next video when we dive deep into the mythology of Andromeda, black holes, and all that jazz. It's going to be fun for the Libra moon. Okay, I'm going to put this here because I need to drink more of this. Okay, so this is the sky that we can see. We have our sun in Aries moving into Taurus this month, and these are the constellations that riddle our sky. Some of these are circumpolar. The Big Dipper revolves around the celestial pole, and so it is seen all year long, but April is the month where it is most visible. And so these would be the constellations ideally to try to maybe connect with, or reach out to, maybe do some sort of stargazing as we're working to try to integrate all of these within the self. These would be the ones to kind of focus on during the nighttime. While the other ones, as we go on to here, are going to be more like what's going on during the day. And so if you're like me and you're always up there looking up at the sky, these are the ones to kind of, zero in on. Both Leo and the Hydra are two of Hercules's 12 labors, which are representative of the hero's journey through the zodiac. Leo is very representative of our solar egoic consciousness, that polarized animus, right? That really needs integration. While the Hydra is actually the serpent that is responsible for wounding Chiron. His blood is what the arrow that Hercules actually during these labors dipped into the Hydra blood in order, I believe, to take out a centaur. Don't quote me on that. Oh, maybe he was trying to take out one of the other labors. I can't remember, but it was during one of his labors. And he ended up wounding his mentor, the trainer of heroes, Chiron. So Hydra has a lot to do with wounds, deep psychic wounds that are deep within our unconscious. While other serpent energies has a lot more to do with this primordial power, this kundalini, this awakening, wise serpent. This does too, but through pain, through the integration of wounds. So this is really prevalent in the sky right now. And then the Big Dipper is the great bear that circles around the little bear, which houses the pole star. This is the constellation that makes that ancient universal symbol that all cultures knew about and then was later stolen and inverted and turned into something that it was never meant to be by none other than Hitler himself, the swastika. And it was a way for our ancient ancestors to track the cycles, particularly the cycles connected to the seasons. And right now we are in this rebirth of that entire cycle that counts the seasons here in the spring. I think it's interesting that we also have in the sky both Libra, the scales, trying to really balance these deep shadow psychic wounds that we need to work on, and also this egoic consciousness that also needs integration through the cycles of nature and ourselves, and our development as a civilization and as a person. And then we also have Virgo, the Virgin, which is very representative of Demeter, this earth goddess that is being reborn right now. Once her daughter comes home, we've touched on this mythology, we'll touch on it as we go. But also Scorpio. And so all of this that I just discussed is in order to unlock the mysteries of existence. Scorpio rules the 8th house. It rules the mysteries. It rules that which is all that this is for. Like what we're trying to understand within ourselves, and our reality. Okay. I love that book. Okay, so really quick before we get to the chart, I want to cover just a couple of these. Okay, just this slide. Okay, so this is a post that I wrote back when Jupiter entered Pisces, which is when we really started to feel this influx of what this Jupiter-Neptune conjunction on the 12th is all about. And I wrote this really long post with some detailed dates. And so I want to cover them here now. Take a screenshot so you can kind of think back to these dates for yourself to kind of understand what this is all about and how maybe you can best harness it. This is a very magical transit that then has Venus transit through later. Jupiter is one of astrology's benefics, meaning it comes to lend beneficial aid. Venus is exalted in Pisces, meaning it works better in Pisces than it does any of its own signs, whether that be Taurus or Libra. My Venus is actually in Libra. And it is astrology's other benefic. So both of these points are actually going to be pretty involved in this Jupiter-Neptune conjunction. This is a huge opportunity for like a beneficial push forward. So these dates might help you to kind of understand it a little bit more. I'm just going to read this post because I want to cover all these points, and if I try to do it, we'll be here forever. So let's start with this. You guys have probably heard me talking about how this is a huge influx of mysticism that we have not felt since the 1800s. And technically, humanity has only felt one time because this 1800s conjunction happened right after Neptune was discovered. Prior to that, we didn't even know Neptune existed. And this actually happened inside Pisces. We've had it happen other times, but the last time it actually happened in Pisces, the home sign that both Jupiter and Neptune govern, was back in the 1800s. And this is when we saw this influx of mysticism and the rise of theosophy and all of that, but I'll get into that as I read this, I guess. But to kind of sum it all up, we are now more than ever living in a waking dream. You guys have heard me say this. I'm really dialing in on this right now. This is the pinnacle of this waking dream I've been talking so much about. A myth, a fairy tale. Our own unconscious is being projected at us from all directions, and we can either embrace the symbolism and ride the waves of fantasy, trying not to take anything too literally, aligning with our magic in the process, or the Neptunian delusion will set in and the trip could turn horribly dark. And it really is like a trip. Like Pisces literally governs like altered states of consciousness through drugs. For Pisces governs our own undoing, whether that be a willing alchemical undertaking of dissolution or a complete existential crisis. It's dualistic and it can really go either way. And so the question is, which road will you take? I'm going to cover these as I read this. So, like I said, I wrote this back when Jupiter entered Pisces, which happened towards the end of 2021. So today we finally reach one of the long-awaited transits of 2021, the ingress of Jupiter into its traditional home sign of Pisces. I've really been looking forward to this. I personally really have it because of my chart. Expect to hear astrologers talking and making a ton of fuss about this over the month. And I wrote here for a good reason. It really is a once in a lifetime experience. We will never feel anything like this again in our lives. Neither will our children or maybe our children's children. Maybe. It'll be like 200 years till we feel this again. This is really shifting the dynamic of our sky and our reality, and the energy is beyond magical for several reasons. Jupiter, our higher expansive philosophical mind, takes 12 years to transit the entire zodiac. He spends roughly a year in each sign. During that year, the planet of expansion focuses his lens upon a specific area of your life. So look at your natal chart. What house does Pisces rule in your chart? You guys can look at that apprentice cheat sheet for more information on that, but like honestly, I just recommend Googling it. Googling that house number and seeing what that house governs and reading some blogs on that house. If you know what house Pisces is, you can comment in the chat in your chart. This is the area of your reality that Jupiter will be focusing his expansion on. He's almost done. He's about to dip into Aries. This is like the tail end. This is really happening at the end of Pisces. This is a huge culmination to something we've really been building to. So think about that when you look at your chart. This is the area of your reality that Jupiter will be focusing his expansion on. This is the area of your life you can expect to grow immensely over the next year. And like I said, we're at the pinnacle of it. So here are some dates first. The last time that Jupiter was in Pisces was from 2010 to 2011. So think back to this time to get some insight as to how this energy might influence your reality. However, we have done much growing and evolving since then. So you can expect similar energy to manifest, but from a higher perspective. Jupiter dipped into Pisces from May 2021 to July 2021, and then it transited back into Aquarius because it was retrograde. So this gave us a little sneak peek of this energy. Jupiter officially entered Pisces back on December 28th at the end of 2021, where it will stay all throughout 2022. It will, however, which will then dip into Aries from May 10th to October 28th. It'll station retrograde right before Halloween, and then it'll transit back into Pisces. Before stationing direct and moving forward once more, transiting into Aries right before the winter solstice here in 2022. So it's going to dip into Aries later this year, and then at the end of the year, it will transit into Aries. Right, it's actually on the winter solstice. I checked that is the actual date of the winter solstice that year. This is going to feel like a literal rebirth of the self when that moves into Aries after all this deep like initiation of the wizard is like literally how I look at this. I look at this just like a flood of all of us mystics just being like turned on in deeply healing ways that force us to pierce through the illusions of our own symbolic unconscious and like integrate some shit. But in doing so, like it's like an accelerated rebirth. So now we're coming up on the Neptune-Jupiter conjunction, which will be on April 12th. So this particular transit of Jupiter through Pisces, unlike the one we experienced back in 2010, 2011, is extra special and extra magical because both of the rulers of Pisces are home right now. Jupiter and Neptune. Jupiter is the traditional ruler of Pisces, and Neptune is the modern ruler of Pisces. And they will end up meeting on April 12th. When Jupiter, the ancient traditional ruler of Pisces, and Neptune, the modern ruler of this sign, will conjunct each other at 23 degrees. This is very exciting. Let me tell you why. The last time that Neptune and Jupiter had a conjunction in the sign of Pisces, their home sign, was 1856. This was 166 years ago. This was exactly 10 years after they discovered Neptune, which was only discovered in 1846. Meaning that this 2022 meetup is only the second time ever that the two rulers of this sign have met at home since Neptune's discovery. Prior to this period, Pisces, and therefore our entire spiritual realm and mysticism, which is what Pisces governs, was governed only by the dogmatic, philosophical, Hierophant Jupiter, giving us religions and cults and gurus and fixed belief systems. But like a lot of teachers and guides as well. With the discovery of Neptune in 1846 and the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction of 1856, we saw a major shift in the realm of spirituality. The tides turned from following traditional dogma to personal enlightenment, intuition, mysticism, and the development of the soul. This energy was new, and therefore, with the magic came the shadow. This manifested as the spiritualist movement, seances, and the focus on channeling outside entities and dissociative spirituality, rather than like the development of the individual, and really focus on like healing our traumas and all of the things we're really getting back to now, right? But simultaneously, psychology and depth psychology was also being developed, and so it's like all these different branches were developing independently that are now kind of being merged together. So I'm not saying this was bad. I do think that this had to happen, but now we're coming back around to another cycle, right? Dissociative spirituality. These were the years that Helena Blavatsky traveled and studied in Tibet before she ended up starting Theosophy, and by default, the modern New Age movement. We would not be here today talking about this if it was not for this woman, which she started that in 1875. I have mixed feelings about her, but I know that for a fact. We would not be here today if it weren't for her. In this period, we see a rise in occultism and the independent study of esoteric doctrine. Interests in Atlantis and other lost histories exploded. Everybody wrote a book on Atlantis in the 1800s. They exploded, and public mystery schools were formed out of occult lodges and secret societies. Much spiritual, Pisces, information, Jupiter, was released from the depths of the collective unconscious, and with it came much illusion. All of these themes will be surfacing from the unconscious once more. How can we navigate this from a higher perspective? Jupiter has spent the last 2 years pinned down in the realm of Saturn, both while transiting through Aquarius and Capricorn. And now he returned to the cosmic waters of the Akasha, this boundaryless sea, the womb from which it came, so expansive, magical, mystical, yet so ungrounded, that it's easy to get caught up in the illusion and miss the message entirely. We are now, more than ever, living in a waking dream, a myth, a fairy tale. Our own unconscious is being projected at us from all directions, and we can either embrace the symbolism and ride the waves of fantasy, trying not to take anything too literally, aligning with our magic in the process, or the Neptunian delusion sets in, and the trip can go horribly dark. For Pisces governs our undoing, whether that be a willing alchemical undertaking or a complete existential crisis. It's dualistic, and it can really go either way. Which road would you take? I wrote here, positive manifestations of this energy is magic, mysticism, art. It's highly intuitive and empathic. Its connection to all that is spiritual, universal, or intangible. pay very close attention to your dreams. That is where everything's coming from right now, this realm of dreams, very much so. Both your sleeping and waking dreams. So if you're like zoning out and having intuitive hits come, those are deeply rooted in this conjunction here. So, trust them. Both sleeping and waking ones. For the universal force and therefore our own unconscious will be communicating very loudly through dreams, music, myths, and symbolism. Things to watch out for. Cults. Like, you guys, it's going to get really culty up in here. It's already so bad. It is so bad out there right now, but, the energy is going to get worse. Particularly after this. Like, this is going to ignite it, and then it's going to be a whole, developing as we have another, 166-year cycle play out, or however long this one takes. Sometimes it's a little bit different because of retrogrades. But this is going to really kick off a lot of cult mentality, and so just be mindful. Cults. This really, really, really feeds a lot of beneficial energy to the realm of all that is secret and hidden. And so this definitely governs secret societies and the entire realm of spirituality and mysticism. So the good, the bad, the in-between, all of that is really getting fed a lot right now. So you can expect a lot of agenda to be tied to this. Whenever we have these huge opportunities for growth, those can be used. They're neutral, And the occultists high up, they know. So keep that in mind as we navigate this. Things to watch out for. Dissociative spirituality. Energy siphoning through fear. Pisces governs fear. Secret agendas. The unintegrated self. Both our projection of our unintegrated self and other people's projection of their unintegrated self upon each other. Mirroring it back and forth as well. Projecting your shit onto your intimate relationships. Hidden fears, traumas, and enemies can surface, as can repressed emotions. And with Jupiter involved, these can become explosive. Jupiter expands things. Anything you touch is usually that's good and beneficial, but if more chaotic things are manifesting, Jupiter will blow it out of proportion. Very grandiose displays of growth. So especially because of the Pisces connection and both these home planets there, Pisces governs escapism and addictions. So that energy, if you are prone to these, be mindful moving forward. Have ways to keep yourself busy. Where was I at? Because the energy is prone to turning to means of escapism and addiction. High, tense emotions that can stem from the collective unconscious itself, especially if you have strong Pisces placements or mutable sign placements. So that's Pisces or the opposite sign, Virgo or Sag or Gemini. That means that those planets are, especially if they're around 23 degrees in any of those signs, those planets are either conjunct, in opposition, or square at this point, and so you're really feeling it. Confusion, naivete, and being led easily astray, because this sign does lack boundaries. So keep that in mind. Question everything and take nothing literal. Like I said before, this is all an illusion. Think in signs, symbols, synchronicity. Our logical mind is traveling the cosmic sea, and there is no way this is going to make sense to our analytical mind. Jupiter will help, but in a more philosophical rather than logical way. Okay, that's all I got on that. I saw you guys in the chat, so I'm going to catch up on that before we go over to the chart. Okay. Oh, thank you, Janelle. She likes my thumbnails. Okay. She agrees. Leslie has a Pisces moon and rising. In the first house, this is deeply awakening this badge of the wizard that you get to wear for others. So you get to even help them recognize this within themselves by developing this deeply within yourself. Amanda's in the 12th house. You are just going to be full-blown wizard. You're in the depths of the cosmic sea right now, in your 12th house, Amanda. You have a natural chart. B says 6th house here, only my north node is there in retrograde. So everybody's nodes are retrograde. The nodes travel backwards. It's not only your north node. Your north node is one of the most important parts of your chart. Your north node is your mission and your purpose and what your soul is meant to do here in this incarnation. And being that it's in Pisces, the sign of magic and mysticism and spirituality, and then it's in the 6th house, which is the house of service. You're literally here to be of service in the realm of magic and mysticism, and this is part of your karmic purpose because of your north node. It's a really powerful placement right there, B. What degrees is your north node at? Amanda says this is really big. Her mom passed away 10 years ago on April 12th, and it was a huge spiritual awakening for me. Oh my gosh. And it's coming back around to that, Amanda. Yeah, this is going to be a huge one for you. The 12th house also rules death. So that, it was more of like a, physical experience that happened 10 years ago. And now this is going to be like a spiritual experience, preparing you for, like I said, Jupiter entering Aries and being that rebirth of the self from this like deep, deep, deep alchemical spiritual death and phoenix moment. And that experience 10 years ago with your mom probably has a lot of the wisdom that like propelled you on the path that you've been for the past, 10, 12 years. Yes, that is big for you, Amanda. Okay. B. 15 degrees. And she says she never knew this. Yeah, 15 is really close. So it's very strongly aspected all throughout this month. Okay, guys. All right. So let's go to the chart. Of course, it's already been an hour. And we'll come back. We'll have some stuff on Beltane. I used to be like, I'm taking too long. People are never going to watch these long videos. But, it's just not possible to say all the things I want to say and not take a long time. This is the whole monthly one, too. So, okay. I need to get some of these other notes out. Amanda says totally. Okay, cool. You have Aries in your 2nd house. Then, this Pisces is happening in your 1st house, which is your house of the self. Okay, I'm taking notes. Okay, cool. Let's dive into this. Okay, I'm not going to touch too much on the beginning of the month. I want to just kind of point out some of how we kind of started the month. I'm calling this the month of Andromeda. I've noticed since I started tracking the moon as it transits throughout the whole zodiac, throughout the 28 whatever days, and like where it starts in the beginning of the month and where it ends. It's always usually about the same constellation where it starts and where it ends. And I've been paying a lot of attention to that for months now. And I've noticed that it's a good little summary of where we're at this month. And of course, the month starts off with the moon transiting stars in Andromeda, and it also ends that way. And we have a huge Andromeda stellium throughout the month. And so that energy is more prevalent than anything else. And so if you look at the calendar, I have here in like the days leading up to the month before it starts, just like the energy of the whole month. And so I just wrote here, all month long, we have Chiron, the sun, Mercury. So Chiron, the sun, the moon's here in the beginning of the month, but it quickly moons over. Mercury, the asteroid Sophia, which represents that unconscious or pre-conscious primordial mother, that darkness that birthed the light, that which came before the like God consciousness, right? It's a Gnostic term that we've covered in videos that are actually available here on YouTube. If you scroll and you look for a thumbnail that has something that says Sophia on it, it'll be about that. And then also Eris, which is another representation of the feminine, but it's more of the repressed feminine. So while Sophia kind of represents the pre-forgotten feminine, the feminine that came before that has been forgotten, Eris, while it does represent chaos, which is the archetype that came before, that birthed everything, and so it is kind of connected to that same sort of divine feminine expression, it's more of like the unwanted, the shunned, the uninvited feminine, the feminine that's not allowed to the table. And it does represent very much chaos, because the masculine order never really wants to let in the chaos and give up its reins, but it inevitably finds its way in, right? So anyway, this whole little stellium here in Aries is pretty much transiting stars, stars in the constellation of Andromeda and the galaxy of Andromeda throughout the entire month. Andromeda, we are going to be diving really, really deep into the mythology of Andromeda on the 14th when we meet for the Libra full moon over on Patreon. I'm not going to get too deep into it now because I'll be here forever, so I'm going to try to do this as quickly as possible. Andromeda, to me, Andromeda translates to the ruler of men, actually, which I find interesting. And it is very representative of the feminine expression. To me, you guys know, I like to look at like actual outer space. I'm a firm believer of as above, so below, and I think that what's happening up there really does matter down here. And both through astronomy and mythology, Andromeda represents divine partnership. So we have the Andromeda galaxy, which our sun will align with on the 16th, and Mercury will align with on the 27th. I know that Sophia aligns with it too. When is that? Did I not write it? It's over there. I'll figure it out. But we have all of these placements here transiting over the center of the Andromeda galaxy. And so if you follow my work for a while, you've heard me explain this, but I'm going to try to do it as quickly as possible. We are a star. Our sun is a star in the Milky Way galaxy. Our sun and many of the other fixed stars that we see out in the sky, with the exception of the Andromeda galaxy, all rotate around the galactic center, which we have here at 27 degrees of Sagittarius. This is the center of our Milky Way galaxy. The month actually started off with Atlantis. This is the asteroid Atlantis, conjunct the galactic center at the same time that our sun and Mercury conjuncted Chiron. And so we were processing a lot of wounds, and a lot of them were really spanning from the distant past. I read recently that the radiation, like the energy that is propelling through our atmosphere and our ionosphere, like literally into planet Earth from the center of the Milky Way galaxy, takes 300 centuries to get here. It takes 300 centuries to get here from the center of the Milky Way galaxy. It went on to say that it was as old, the energy coming from the center of the Milky Way galaxy, by the time it gets here, like it had been traveling since civilization was starting to emerge here on Earth. And I was like, oh, my civilization's been here a lot longer than that, but okay. But anyway, it's very ancient source of knowledge that is connected to our more cosmic mind. And right now it's really funneling through this Atlantean archetype, the same time that we're really working through a lot of core wounds. If you watched my last moon video, you know that this full moon that happened at the end of March, the beginning of April, here, that was conjunct Chiron, was also conjunct the asteroid CERN. CERN's like right here. And so we are repeating a lot of these collective Atlantean wounds right now. And much of it has to play out. Humanity has karmic cycles to repeat before we get to the fork in the road. And we're at this sort of pinnacle right now. So this is the center of the Milky Way galaxy. And then we have the Andromeda galaxy, which is our next closest galaxy. That actually falls here at 27 degrees of Aries, the center of the Andromeda galaxy. And these galaxies are actually shooting towards each other through space. And they are going to collide and create a super galaxy in about 4.5 billion years. Some astronomers think that the outer gases that are housed within our two galaxies have already started to merge. But the fate of these galaxies are forever intertwined. Their destinies have collided, and someday they will literally collide. Like I showed you on the thumbnail, there's also the galaxy called M33. 33 is interesting because it is connected to Christ and the divine child. And that little galaxy actually rotates, it orbits around Andromeda. And so I do really look at Andromeda as the divine feminine counterpart to our Milky Way. And then that divine child, all three of those galaxies will merge when they unite. And so to me, it very much represents these fated, destined partnerships. This is very much going to be a focus. Our Libra moon, we're just jumping around, you guys. I'm not going to try to go in order. Our Libra moon, which is on the 16th, will be exactly opposite it will be exactly opposite the Andromeda galaxy. The sun will be exactly conjunct it. So this is really bringing up this fated partnership dynamic. The mythology speaks very heavily to it too. This mythology is really strongly manifested within my own personal reality. I actually have my Jupiter exactly conjunct the center of the Andromeda galaxy, and Eddie, my partner, has his moon and Mars exactly conjunct Perseus, which is the Andromeda's divine partner, here, which is actually where the node is right now. And our story is very strongly aligned with the Andromeda mythology. I'm going to briefly try to cover it. So Andromeda was a princess. She was actually the princess of Ethiopia, I believe. And her parents, particularly her mother, was talking a whole bunch of crap, about how beautiful she is. Yeah, so I'm a big fan of the Sophia archetype. I think that once you add that into the Christian mystic tradition, I vibe with it. I vibe a lot with Christian archetypes for some reason. Okay, what was I saying? Andromeda was a princess. Her mom talked a lot of shit about how beautiful she was and more beautiful. The story is kind of different sometimes. Sometimes it's more beautiful than all the gods. Sometimes it's just more beautiful than the sea nymphs. Sometimes she pissed off Zeus. Sometimes she pissed off Poseidon. But the consensus is that Poseidon ends up sending a sea serpent to ravage the kingdom. And so her parents are like, oh man, this is bad. What do we do? I know, I'm going to chain my daughter to a rock as a sacrifice to the sea serpent, and like, all will be good. And so they did. They chained their daughter to a rock, and in hopes that it would go away. And so in and of that, it definitely represents this like connection to like generational karma and ancestral trauma and these wounds that reside within our lineage that literally chain us and bind us. And that we have to work through because it's literally in our blood and our DNA, right? So Andromeda, chained to a rock, sea serpent, yada yada. Pause. Go over here to Perseus. So Perseus is a very interesting mythology. We're going to dive pretty deep into him later. I'm going to kind of fast forward. He has to save his mom, a divine feminine archetype, from some king that like really wants to marry her, and she's like, dude, I don't want to marry you. And he like pretty much kidnapped her, and he gave Perseus what he thought was an impossible task. But Perseus is a demigod, and so, you know, they're heroes at heart, and you know, they usually can do the impossible. And so he told him if he was able to defeat the Gorgon Medusa, that he could have his mom back. So Perseus goes to defeat the Gorgon Medusa. Medusa, in and of itself, is a whole another completely misunderstood archetype. Most people look at her as a horrible monster that turns men to stone, but they usually leave out the beginning of how that happened. Medusa was a beautiful maiden who was devoted to Athena. And Poseidon, again, the same god responsible for sending the sea serpent. And so you can see how it's all connected, right? And Poseidon governs the sea. It governs the unconscious impulses. Poseidon, I believe he may have been shot with Eros' arrow. I'm not sure. I'll know by the next moon because I'm going to dive back into this mythology. He may or may not have been possessed by the flames of passion from Eros' arrow. He may have been acting on his own accord. Chased Medusa, who was a human, a regular human, trying to rape her. And she ran into Athena's temple, of which she was a devotee. She was a priestess of Athena. And she got raped in the temple. And Athena walked in, and instead of punishing her brother, or her uncle, she instead punished Medusa, and she repressed her. She shunned the feminine because Athena is very rooted in the patriarchal tradition. Athena came from the head of Zeus. So she was birthed from the male aspect, and she's working on trying to integrate the feminine for herself. And she is more polarized in the masculine expression. She is the goddess of wisdom and war. And it's harder to access the wisdom and much more easier to access the war because she is very rooted in the masculine aspect. So she turns her into a Gorgon and shuns her to a cave where she's like, you know, why is my thing not plugged in? Hold on, guys. I need to plug this in or it's going to die. So she's shunned to a cave, right? Sorry. And it's this feminine, much like the other ones we've talked about, that's been repressed. And so Perseus says he's going to go on it. Some gods help him. He gets flying shoes from Hermes. A lot of other things transpire, which we'll talk about later. And he ends up defeating the Gorgon Medusa. And things transpire after that. From Medusa's head, because she was actually pregnant at the time, springs the Pegasus, which Perseus ends up riding. It's like his sidekick, his familiar, that came from the alchemization of this deeply feminine wound that was Medusa as he severed her head. Then, as he's flying to save his mother, another feminine archetype with this severed, alchemized feminine wound, he's gone and, you know, put Medusa, in my opinion, out of her misery and sent her up to the stars. Ended her curse, right? Transmuted it into the Pegasus that he then rode into the heavens in a like path of ascension, pretty much, kind of. So then he's flying back to save his mom, and he sees Andromeda chained to the rock. And he's like, yo, girl, what's up? And she's like, oh, yeah, my parents suck. Like, I'm totally chained to a rock. And he's like, okay, well, I'm going to save you. And so he uses Medusa's head to defeat the sea serpent. He uses the integrated wound, the serpent wound, the knowledge that we get from integrating that Hydra, that's representative of Chiron, where our sun is right now, right? He uses that wound to then save not only his mother, but also his divine partner, Andromeda. And they do end up getting married, and depending on who you talk to, sometimes they lived happily ever after. The mythologies are always really messed up, but I like to think that they lived happily ever after. And this was a really strong archetype in my chart. I like to think that I saved myself, but Eddie was definitely this like divine counterpart that was there to support me in the saving. Ironically, I've like thought back on a lot of things that have happened, and now I look at things through like a deeply like symbolic and mythological lens. And I realized that when I met him, I had this chain that I wore on my wrist for way too long. I had this bike chain that when I was really on way too many drugs at one point, I thought was a good idea to put on my wrist with like a peg through it, but like the peg wouldn't stay. And so I super glued it, and so it was like permanent. I had like a permanent bike chain bracelet, and I thought it was like so punk rock, and it was there for like decades. I had that thing forever. Showered with it, set off freaking, what's it called? Metal detectors everywhere you would go that had a metal detector. I would set it off. I'd be like, it's my bracelet, and they're like, take it off. I'm like, I can't. I had this thing on forever. And when I met him, he was like, this thing is awful. Like, it keeps clanking me. It's awful. I was like, I can't take it off. And he had his neighbor, like, literally cut the chain off of me. And I was like, oh, I feel so free. And I never thought about that. I would totally forgot all about that. But I was thinking about Andromeda and how it really played out so very strongly over a multitude of things, really helping. The partnership between him and I really helped me in order to have a safe foundation to even dive into any of my own ancestral things or things like that and process them. But yeah, this mythology is really strongly activated all throughout this month, more so than anything else. And this actually happens every year. So the constellation and the galaxy of Andromeda falls in Aries. So the sign and the galaxy point that represents this like divine other, this divine collision point, is transited by the sun and the personal planets every Aries season, which is the sign of the self. And so we already know that we have a full moon opposite a sign every season, right? So we already will have Libra illuminated, the sign of others and partnership and marriage and all of that jazz. Illuminated during Aries season, we have that all the time. But the like more hidden archetypal landscape of like the fixed stars and the galactic realm is deeply, deeply rooted in this as well. She's all, I'm totally chained to a rock. Yeah, she was like totally chained to a rock. The story of your chain is so crazy dope. You know what? I think I kept it. I think it's in my chest. I'll pull it out for the Libra moon and I'll show you. I can't believe I had that thing for so long. I was like, I'm so punk rock. This is so cool. It was so dumb. And then as soon as I did it, I was like, that was stupid. That was stupid. Okay. That's just like one of the things I'll have to think when I break down the mythology, there's like so much. The Andromeda mythology has been really loud, but yeah, he wouldn't like to hear this though. He's always like, you saved yourself. I don't want you to ever think that you did anything for me because then it'll rely on me. And I was like, oh, okay. I don't think that, but I wouldn't have done it for myself. At the point when things were happening and I was pulling my life together, it was certainly like, if it was just me and I was left to my own devices, there weren't other people around, I would have just continued to fall into the abyss and never have worked my way back out. And so other people do trigger healing within us. And this month is prime ground for other people triggering healing within the self and the partnership. Especially once Venus enters Pisces. All right, so we kind of jump it around. I want to kind of cover some of these like more deeper esoteric topics as opposed to like this is happening on this day and this is happening on this day, because you guys know that I think that particularly the inner 7 planets, so the sun, the moon, and through out to Saturn, the planets we can see with our eyes, I really do look at those as like the ruling archons that govern our reality. And I don't want to give too much credit to a lot of their transits. I want to look at the bigger, wider, more alchemical picture as to how we can evolve along with the underlying energy. If that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. I don't know. We're just going to see where this goes. Okay. So we talked about how the beginning of the month was all about this conjunction with Chiron, and we have been really diving, and this is where our moon was at the beginning of the month, diving deep into core wounds in order to alchemize them and unlock the wisdom that they hold. Let's get to today. I also talked earlier about how we have Mars and Saturn conjunct in the sky. It was exact on the 4th. That also sits opposite square the nodes, which are points of the eclipses, our north node in Taurus, which is that pathless path, this new story that's about to unfold, and also the south node in Scorpio. And so this is really an access point to like literally all the ancient mysteries we've learned in the past, even as a collective, even if your soul hasn't necessarily obtained it. I think right now the portal to that is kind of open, but it will require so much work on our projections and our shadow and all of those like more deeper, darker aspects of our psyche and our consciousness in order to access this. But there's so much waiting to come through in regards to like the mysteries of our existence. But a lot of work will be done in this house, but in this sign. But many of us were born with Pluto and Scorpio, and so we're used to this alchemical work, and so I think that if we're willing to kind of like dive in and embrace it, particularly through eclipse season, and not fight the portal, because we're really going to be just like kind of open to this like fated, destined portal where we're just kind of like shot in the right direction. If we kind of go with it, so much is ready to be flooded into our consciousness from the other side of the veil, which Scorpio very much represents. And this is in order for us to trek this pathless path here in the sign that is governed by Taurus. So for me, it's my 9th house. This right here, the 9th house is the house where like if you're going to write a book, like that's the house. The transits through that house are going to be the house that's going to write a book. That's the house that governs like academia and literature and like literally writing a book and expanding through philosophical concepts and things like that. And so I know that my pathless path that is about to be funneled out through wherever is this book that's like vaguely developing all kinds of places. And for me, this Taurus, it needs to be grounded, but right now a lot of things are still coming through. And this Mars-Saturn conjunction that was exact yesterday that we're still very much feeling, it's like I said before, is that like Saturn coming to kind of slow Mars down during Mars season, during Aries season, so that we don't jump the gun too much, so we can take proper action moving forward through here and really allow the vision that is this Jupiter-Neptune conjunction in Pisces that we'll be experiencing the following week really simmer and really let that still be in that mutable energy as opposed to this deeply cardinal energy where our sun is, who wants to go, 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 go. Saturn at home in Aquarius, a fixed sign, kind of takes dominion over Mars, and it makes Mars, which is Mars representative of our Aries consciousness. That's our beginning full consciousness, that spark of life that hasn't developed yet. It's fiery, it's cardinal, it's birthing things it doesn't fully understand just yet. While Aquarius is the sign of that evolved, enlightened consciousness. Ideally, it can manifest as a multitude of things, but ideally in its purest, most evolved form, like we were talking about before, it is indicative of that fixed energy. So it is fixed and firm and stable while also expanding into the future to progress us forward. Yesterday, when we had Mars conjunct Saturn, which was square the nodes, we also had some other things happening. So Sophia and Eris met in the sky. So we had a conjunction between Sophia and Eris, the forgotten feminine and the repressed feminine, meeting together on top of, pretty much on top of the black hole of the Andromeda galaxy. So really getting like a push from that galactic source of the feminine as well, right? It's like the forgotten feminine, the repressed feminine, the sacrificed feminine, all meeting up together as one, ultimately, is what that really was. The same time, this all happened yesterday, the same time that Lilith, which represents the like shadow feminine and also like the projected feminine, it's also repressed as well, and it holds all of that which is our shadow, which houses a lot of our magic and also a lot of our shit that we need to process, that we have like shoved under the rug. Well, that point aligned with the pole star. The pole star I always kind of look at as this guiding point of stillness that's like a focal point. Like, look at this. This will not lead you astray. Just like when we're out on the sea in a boat, right? Which is ultimately what we're out here. This is like the cosmic sea, and we're trying to navigate it as humans, right? But if we were out on the sea trying to navigate the literal sea, we would be using the northern star. And so this, using the northern star here in astrology, helps us to kind of know what to lean into when we're lost. And right now it's really showing that while we're in this deeply masculine season, and we have this huge spark of masculine consciousness that's ready to push forward and exert its will and create and develop and expand and project, in order to do that from a evolved state, it cannot forget where it came from. And so it's asking it to remember all that it learned while traveling the unconscious realm, to have these feminine counterparts in its back pocket, and to know that they stand shoulder to shoulder as one. So that was where we were at yesterday. Okay, so this brings me to today. I know it's been almost an hour and a half, but I feel like I said stuff that was more important than some of this other stuff, so I don't really care. You said Pluto and Mercury. Yeah, I have Pluto and Mercury too in Scorpio. They're actually conjunct at 0 degrees, which is one of the most strongest degrees in astrology. Pluto and Scorpio conjunct in the third house of the mind. It's why I can't be like, oh, Mars, it's Aries season. Aries is anything normal. I can't say anything normal. It's why I have to dive in. See, I literally couldn't even come up with it right now. It's my conjunction, my Scorpio third house, Pluto, Mercury conjunction. That is like the sign. And for you too, that is the aspect of the detective. We are penetrating. We dive deep, like the surface. Like, oh, I don't want to be up in the surface. It's so boring. Like, please, I'd rather not be here at all. And that's also Pluto conjunct Mercury. It's like deep or nothing at all. Okay. Today, Venus enters Pisces. So I'm going to move to the next day, so it moves over because the hours are a little off. This was like midnight. But Venus entered Pisces today. So this is actually a really good transit, you guys. Venus is considered exalted in Pisces. So every planet has a sign that it rules. Some of them have 2 signs that they rule. Venus rules Taurus and Libra, traditionally. And then they always have a sign that the planet is exalted, and that means like it's doing super extra good and it super really likes it. And Venus is exalted in Pisces. Neptune is actually considered to be the evolution of Pisces, the evolution of Venus, while Venus governs like more our interpersonal relationships and like love on a more like relationship based level. Neptune governs like universal love and like spiritual love. And so when Venus is in Pisces, it's really representing that like higher aspect that it's ultimately obtaining to embody, which is Neptune. Neptune, is, especially in esoteric astrology, is considered the evolution of Venus. And so Venus in Pisces is really bringing a flood of like romance and emotional connection and all that jazz. I'm looking forward to this because my man is an air sign. He is a Gemini, and they are always somewhere else in their head. Well, half of him. He's like have multiple personalities. One of them is clingy, but the other one is like not. But Venus entering Pisces actually enters my 7th house of relationships, so I've been kind of looking forward to this. But then I'll be like, leave me alone. Oh, the paradox. Anyway. This is actually happening the same time as Mars comes in its exact square with the nodes. So it just kind of adds more credence to what I had said earlier, that this Mars-Saturn conjunction that you probably saw a whole bunch of negative posts about yesterday about, oh, we can get nothing done. Do you feel like you're hitting a wall? It's because of this conjunction. Like, don't even bother to do anything today. It's just not gonna end well. Don't initiate things, blah blah blah. Like yeah, blah blah blah, whatever. I think, like I said, some of us need that ground, especially those of us who are strong in this cardinal energy. We need this grounded Saturn structure in order to make the proper decisions. And right now, Saturn was kind of coming with that to make Mars kick back as Venus entered this Piscean realm and wants to really experience it. Venus governs our senses, our sensuality, our ability to really feel and in tune on a more physical bodily level, physical level, that which is not physical, that which is etheric, right? Because it very much governs Taurus, which governs all of our physical senses and the physical earthly realm. I'm not going to cover too much of the lunar transits throughout the month. They're there if you're interested. I want to kind of get moving. So today's the 5th. The next couple of days, we're going to have some sextile actions. So sextiles are interesting aspects. Oh, thank you. She's all, I love when you mention your relationship with Eddie. I love that man. He puts up with a lot of shit, but like, so do I. Okay, so throughout this, particularly the 7th and the 8th, Mercury, which will be here in, let me go to the 7th. Mercury, which will be here in Aries, the sign of the self, really pushing forward and developing the self, this like primal consciousness that also makes us really scattered. So if you feel like you're like, this energy is very like manic and like ADD in nature. So if you already like kind of lean on this neurodivergent spectrum and you feel like you're kind of like starting this and starting this, but you don't have any sort of like longevity, just lots of little sparks of creativity. It's kind of to be expected, particularly while Mercury is transiting through Aries. This is where we just spark things into being. Throughout the 7th and the 8th, Mercury will be sextiling this Saturn Mars conjunction in Aquarius. So look to see where this falls in your chart, and look to see where this falls in your chart. These houses are being given the opportunity to kind of work together, but it requires us to take action. So sextiles are harmonious aspects like trines. Trines just flow. The energy flows. Sometimes it's flowing and it's good. Sometimes it's flowing and it's challenging, but it's flowing. The energy is going. Sextiles can flow, but once they do flow, they are there to lend beneficial aid, but they require initiative on our part. We have to reach out for that benefit. I kind of look at sextiles as like tests, like little initiatory tests. It's like, this is here. You can take advantage of it. If you don't later, it's going to come back to bite you in the ass, but it's here now if you want to work a little bit towards it. Otherwise, later, you're going to have to work like a lot. They're like these little opportunities to kind of do the damn thing. So over the 7th and the 8th, Mercury is going to be sextiling both Mars and Saturn. And so if you feel like maybe you are taking action and having to kind of redirect a bunch of times at Saturn in order to take the proper action, or you do feel like you're hitting a sort of wall, or maybe like you couldn't really do anything over the coming days, maybe that's because you didn't have the proper information, Mercury, just yet. And so this sextile here is going to be coming with something. And so pay attention because it's going to kind of lend the information that you need. This could involve communication with other people or just like sparks within your personal consciousness. But being as though Mars and Saturn are currently in Aquarius, which literally governs the collective as a whole and like all groups and friends, it could be coming from there as well. Every time someone tells me that kind of thing, I do the opposite. LOL. But grounding is nice. Yeah, we're going to need to definitely be grounded throughout this month. Grounding. Your boyfriend is a Gemini too. Yeah, I'm a Libra. So that's one of the 3 air signs are Aquarius, Gemini, and Libra. And Gemini and Libra are a really, really, really good match. And so is Aries, the opposite of Libra, is also considered a really good match. Geminis get a lot of flack, but I really like that sign. I really like that. If one of your personalities is annoying me, then I only have to wait like a little while longer until you like snap into somebody else who's less annoying. He also doesn't stay mad very long because he can't ever stay one person for too long, so it kind of works to my benefit. Okay, so let's move to the 10th. We're kind of skipping around, you guys. I want to kind of cover more of the greater landscape. So on the 10th, Mercury will enter Taurus. I'm going to move over just so that it moves on. Mercury will enter Taurus. It actually happens on the 10th, but it's like later in the day, so just go with it. Mercury enters Taurus and it squares Pluto. So Pluto, before it enters Taurus, it actually squares Pluto. And then it enters Taurus. So me and Spiritual Warrior 333 were just talking earlier about how we both have Mercury and Pluto in Scorpio. Mine are conjunct hers. Maybe they're close by, I don't know. But this is a similar aspect. It's manifesting a little bit differently. It's not as deep, but it can be. Whenever Mercury and Pluto aspect in the sky, whether it's through opposition, conjunction, square like this is, it makes our mind very, very, very deep and penetrating in order to cut through and see. In this case, this might very much be manifesting in order for us to cut through and see deep within the self. This is happening on top of Sophia. So this is like the unintegrated self, the pre-conscious self, things we were unaware of, things that Mercury wants to see and understand and grasp and integrate and alchemize. And Pluto wants to help with, but only Pluto can see. Only Pluto can go deep enough in order to see. Pluto is in Capricorn, so it is bringing some like grounding to this, but it's asking us to kind of go deep into the earth in order to then like ascend out the volcanic mountain, because Capricorn very much governs the top of the chart. It governs this pinnacle, this mountain, this 10th house. But Pluto is Hades, right? So this mountain is not a mountain. This mountain is a volcano. And we're feeling the fire. We're feeling the heat. We're feeling the alchemy. Spiritual Warrior says, what book do you recommend that teaches and puts you on the right direction to learn astrology and helps you understand? It's so intriguing. It's a rabbit hole in itself. There isn't a book. I wouldn't say there is like a book. If there is, I haven't found it. I have so many books and you need them all. I don't know. There's a really good book called The Fast Track Astrologer that does a really good job of like explaining all the basics in order for you to kind of like understand the lingo. That would be really great. But I know those of you who have been here for a while, you might be able to like back me up on this. But I think like using your chart and really like us meeting for each of the moons and like looking at your chart and looking at the astrologer's apprentice cheat sheet and like getting familiar with your chart through each lunation, so new moon, and each illumination or full moon as we meet. I think it really has helped a lot of people to start to like understand the language of astrology. And then from there, like it's a little bit of every book. I don't have like a book. Ocean El Mago. I know I'm probably pronouncing that so wrong. She says, I want to join Patreon's Cosmic Awakening tier. I'll message you on Insta with some questions since I'll be new. Yeah, feel free. But sometimes the new messages go over to this like hidden inbox and I do not see them for like a really long time. So if I don't answer, you can email me at thecosmicspacebitch@gmail.com and I'll answer that. Astrology is so complex. It really is so complex, and there is no like right system at all. You are 100% right. There are so many different ways of going about it. I started getting into it through analytical psychology. That's kind of where I started too. I have an educational background in psychology. And she says mythology and tarot and relating symbolism and etc. Yep, so that's pretty much how I did. Everything I know I taught myself. After I already knew a lot of this stuff, I did apprentice underneath Rick Levine for a little bit, but everything I know I taught myself for the most part. And if I did learn something from him, I always credit him. I always am like, I learned this from such and such. But most of the other stuff, I don't know. Once you dive in the rabbit hole, it kind of consumes you. And then once you understand astrology as a language, then you just like live it. And I don't know. I just speak and see and think in astrology now. I don't really know. But yeah, the Fast Track Astrologer, I think I got it on Amazon. That one, when I got it, I was like, okay, I wish I had this in the beginning. This seems like a really good like basis of like covering all the things. Okay, I have no idea where I was, you guys. Okay, let's see. Oh, Mercury square Pluto on the 10th. And then Mercury enters Taurus. So Mercury entering Taurus is really going to start to ground us down as we've been kind of like fiery, like Martians. We've been kind of like fiery Aries energy, fiery rams, just kind of like butting our heads against things and like a little manicky, right? And Taurus is a fixed sign like Aquarius. Taurus comes to like ground us down, give us a semblance of security and balance and safety in order to let us take the action that Aries wants to take so much. Taurus has a lot to do with finances and practicality and the things we will need as we trek this next hero's journey around the zodiac, which we've been touching on so heavily over on Patreon. Saturn will come into its exact square with the nodes on the 11th. So throughout the 10th and the 11th, we're really going to be being asked to ground and take practical action that will help us to build something that lasts. And this something has a lot to do with the nodes, and therefore the eclipses, and therefore this next fated story that is unfolding, which we've had little tastes of. We had little tastes of, particularly since the nodes entered in our last eclipse season. It kind of fell around, I hate to use the word cusp because astrologers hate to use the word cusp, but it fell around this like energetic cusp. But now we're really heading into it at the end of the month. And so Saturn is asking us to kind of take some sort of, either deal with some sort of karmic connection to this path of where we've been and where we're going, learn a lesson in regards to it, build some sort of structure, or take some sort of like authoritarian action for ourselves. Yeah. Okay. So on the 12th, this is all preparing us for really this. The 12th is the like pinnacle of the month. Also the end of the month, the eclipse at the end of the month is really huge too. But the 12th, that Jupiter, Neptune conjunction, find a way to harness that. This is setting us up for a new 12-year cycle, about 12-year cycle. But really, as we discussed earlier, this is a once-in-a-lifetime activation of the wizard is really how I'm really looking at it. Like, we're being lit up. So even more so than the... Well, yeah, because the next new moon is a solar eclipse. And so you're not going to want to do any sort of like manifesting on an eclipse. You're just going to get in the way of what the divine, which is ultimately you, has in store for you. What fate and destiny, things you can't fathom happen during eclipses that propel us forward. And if we try to exert our will too much, we can fuck shit up or just make things more difficult on us. So we won't be really manifesting when it comes to our new moon at the end of the month. But what you can do is harness the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction on the 12th. What's interesting is that the moon will be transiting Hydra, Psyche, and Draco, the main star in the Draco constellation. Hydra and Psyche. So it has a lot to do with that deep unconscious wound, the deep, deep, deep wounds of our consciousness. And so you guys know, I've said this a million times, I'm going to always say this. I'm a firm believer that the universe demands a sacrifice from us, or any sort of archetype divine demands sacrifice from us in order to manifest. We can't make something from nothing, right? And this is where in like the dark occult you get like human sacrifice and all kinds of things in order to harness life force, right? Instead of doing the personal internal work. And so this Neptune-Jupiter conjunction, which falls here in the unconscious realm, in the realm of dreams, in the realm of magic, in the realm of mysticism, in the realm of spirituality, will demand us to dive into this psychic Hydra serpentine wound, in order to acquire and alchemize that, in order to acquire the energy that we will need to manifest. So if you are going to do a ritual on the 12th, which is actually a really great day to do a ritual, the energy around that day is really good. And the days to follow, like the 3 days around that time, are pivotal energy-wise for initiating things. If you are going to harness that, I would do, let's say you're going to do like an intention list, like all the things you want to harness in the house that it governs, in the area that it governs, all the things I just listed, magic, mysticism, unconscious realm, all of that. But you'll have to like pair it with like what you're willing to work on. Be like, I want to birth this into existence. I want to create this. I want to manifest this. And these are the unconscious wounds that I have been made aware of throughout Pisces season, throughout this Aries moon, throughout this past couple of months. This is what I've been made aware of. I see it, I understand, and this is what I'm willing to work on. It's almost like making a deal with ultimately yourself, because the cosmic realm is just yourself, but it shows that you're not just there to exert your will and demand manifestation from nothing. It shows that you are a co-alchemist, right? Okay. Ooh, that's really pretty. Ooh, oh, your name. Oh, I see what you're saying. Imago is Latin for image, is the last stage an insect attains during its metamorphosis, which is literally what this is too. And she says it's a process of growth and development. And ocean is a symbol of the unconscious, so it's kind of the lowdown of my name. Well, your name is the perfect description for the energy that we're really experiencing right now. Okay, harness this, you guys. Harness this on the 12th. Do something on the 12th. It's bigger than any moon. It's bigger than anything we'll ever experience in our life. Look and see where Pisces falls in your chart, and think with your deepest, most imaginative, creative self. Also, if you are an artist or a musician, or you dabble, like that would be a day to dabble. Especially with Venus there too. Oh my gosh, this energy is prime for creating something beautiful, more so than, wow, anything I've seen lately. And you'll be plugged into the like unconscious impulses, and so whatever it is that you create will be like extremely prophetic and stemming from not just your own unconscious but the collective unconscious. Okay, on the 13th, Venus will conjunct the asteroid Sphinx in Pisces, the sign of like mystic truths. And so I always look at the Sphinx as a riddle, but a riddle that helps us unlock like mystic truths and like deep, like spiritual insight, you know? And so being as though it'll be conjuncting Venus on the 13th, that riddle is going to be probably symbolically coming out of the mouths of others. Being as though it's Pisces, it can be literally anybody, because Pisces governs everything. It could also have a lot to do with film and music and art and anything that stems from that unconscious realm, you know, that realm of creativity. Pay attention to the mystery, but also like embrace it, because that is, we're swimming in it. We're swimming in it. And this is kind of about embodying the mystery within the self and like anchoring into it, instead of trying to psychoanalyze it. But I will say that other aspects, like particularly the Mercury, Pluto conjunction square that I said was on the 10th, that's a psychoanalyzing. Like we are going to simultaneously be trying to psychoanalyze things. Even Jupiter in Pisces is trying to get into some sort of truth through the mystic fog, right? But a lot of this is really asking us to kind of just embrace the mystery, instead of trying to figure it out. Like, just embrace the waves of mysticism, the flood of mysticism that will be this Jupiter-Neptune conjunction. Yeah, that's super rad. Your name is super rad. Okay, so on the 14th, Mars will then enter Pisces. So then we will have Mars and Venus, both of the lovers of the zodiac, but really they were star-crossed lovers. Like, it didn't end well for them, and I think people always forget to point that out. But anyway, they are the lovers of the zodiac. Venus governs our relationships. It governs love. It's Aphrodite, the goddess of love, and Mars is the planet that governs our passions and also how we fight for what we love. And we'll have both of those in Pisces, the sign of deep, deep, deep spiritual love. This is deeply romantic, emotional energy. And with both Neptune and Jupiter, the ruler of Pisces here, it's really bringing an influx of this. With the Sun and Mercury having left that sign and these ones still behind, it kind of takes our deeply conscious points. The Sun and Mercury govern our like analytical conscious mind, which can drown in Pisces and get lost and confused. And they've come out. We have Mercury in Taurus grounding down so it can be more practical. The Sun in Aries sparking life from what is being birthed from here. It's almost like these can enjoy the Pisces energy rather than be consumed by it like we were when the Sun and Mercury were back in Pisces during Pisces season, if that makes sense. On the 16th, we have our Libra moon. We'll actually be meeting to discuss that on the 14th. Yes, it is. Sandra says that her boyfriend just got a studio tonight to start up his podcast. It looks like the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction is helping him out. Yes, I would say that. I would also say that since it's today, and today is the 5th, Mars is square the nodes today. So Mars, our planet of action, is square the nodes, that pathless path that we're going to trek into and where we've been. So I would kind of look to see where the fixed signs are in his chart to kind of see how those are aspecting. But I think that that's really good. That's the action for, it's like fated, destined action, but that required a lot of responsibility because Saturn was there too. Okay, Libra, full moon on the 16th. So this moon will actually be here at 27 degrees. I'm not going to make this time exact, you guys, because we'll be here forever. But the sun will be conjunct both the asteroid Sophia and the center of the Andromeda vertex. We will be touching on this so heavily on Patreon. I'm not going to dive too deep into it now, but it's deeply rooted in the other, in the partner, which is deeply feminine, while Aries is deeply masculine, and so it is the partner to our masculine consciousness. It's also like the primordial as opposed to like the full consciousness. Like Aries is really the baby, the spark of life, and this is very rooted in a primordial source, which is why I said that this is a primordial union that is occurring. And this primordial union is very much going to be culminated at the Libra full moon on the 16th when our sun aligns with the Andromeda galaxy. This moon will also, the sun at the Andromeda galaxy will be trining our galactic center. And so it's both of those points, those collision points, those galactic points. They are working harmoniously. They're always trying each other because the Andromeda galaxy and the Milky Way galaxy are fixed points, but the sun is aligning with it and really highlighting that trine that's always there, because this story is fated and destined, and they will collide no matter what. And this moon is also square Pluto. About 2 weeks before Pluto stations retrograde, pretty much still on top of America's natal Pluto. And so this Pluto square is deeply alchemical and penetrating deep into like intimacy and that which is hidden. It's also deeply rooted in the system and the hierarchy and, the stuff happening on a collective. Pluto is a generational planet, and so a lot of these triggers can be manifesting from external sources, but a lot of them can help us to dive more deeply into our intimate relationships, or it can just bring hidden things up to the surface that need to be addressed. But we'll dive deep into this over on Patreon. I'm gonna move on. We're gonna dive so deep into that, you guys. We're gonna talk about black holes. We're gonna talk about Andromeda. We're gonna talk about a lot. Oh, wait. I want to mention the archetypal players that are backing up the Neptune-Jupiter conjunction. I looked into the asteroids. So hold on, it's in this book. I wrote it all down. Forgot about that. So fast rewind back to the 12th when Neptune and Jupiter conjunct. I wanted to see what the hidden archetypal players are, right? So what's interesting is that Neptune and Jupiter will conjunct at 23 degrees of Pisces. They will actually be conjunct the asteroid Ethiopia, which is interesting considering I'm almost positive that Andromeda is the princess of Ethiopia. And whether or not she is, I think she is. You guys can almost quote me on that. Ethiopia is definitely rooted in ancient culture, particularly that connected to the Virgin Mary, which is another asteroid that will be conjunct here, the asteroid Mary. And so it is deeply rooted, yet again, in the feminine expression when you go and expand out far enough, right? This is actually happening opposite the asteroid Aphrodite at 23 degrees of Virgo. Aphrodite is the same archetype as Venus, that archetype that we talked about being exalted here, that archetype that represents love, it represents relationships. And so it brings even more of that deeply intimate romantic vibes to this conjunction, which we already kind of have that feeling here already. This conjunction will actually fall square the asteroid Attica. So Attica is interesting in its mythological connections. So Attica is this area of Greece that is pretty big, but it houses Athens. And Athens is a kingdom which is connected to a whole bunch of mythologies. But pretty much, in short, Athens was ruled by Theseus. Theseus is the hero who defeats the Minotaur in the labyrinth and obtains some sort of sovereignty, right? He then goes to Athens and he unites the battling. Athens is has split up into 4 tribes and is in a civil war, just killing each other. And Theseus is responsible for uniting the tribes of Athens. But Athens, which is actually named after Athena, the goddess of war, like we talked about earlier, who turned Medusa into a Gorgon, who is rooted in the patriarchal expression. Athens is a very warring state, or whatever you want to call it, kingdom. They war with themselves. They actually war with Atlantis, which is on the other side of the galactic center right now. And they're actually responsible, according to Plato, for the fall of Atlantis, after Atlantis was defeated by the Athenians, that was immediately resulted by earthquakes, floods, and destruction, and the ultimate sinking of the island. They also battled the Amazonian tribes, which, as if you followed along with the book we just read over here on YouTube, we know that the Amazonian tribes are the Scythians, and they warred Attica as well. And so this point is going to be square, this conjunction. And so we're having these triggers from wars that spanned all the way into like literal mythology. We don't even know if they were real or not. Triggering these unconscious wounds, ultimately. This is the unconscious, right? We're trying to awaken through our higher mind, Jupiter, mystic truths, Neptune, in order to access deep spiritual love and mystic initiation, right? But this is happening square, this point that is rooted in the goddess of war and all of these wars that I just listed off, right? It's also square an asteroid over here at 24 degrees of Gemini, which is known as Pythia. Pythia, the Pythian priestesses are normally attributed as like channels of the god Apollo, the sun god Apollo. Usually like working or like channeling from the Oracle of Delphi and being devoted to the sun god Apollo. But if you go back far enough in the mythology, you know that the Oracle of Delphi was originally, and this is where the Pythians get their name from, Pythian, like Python. The Pythian priestesses, before they were the priestesses to Apollo, they were the priestesses to Gaia, as was the temple that Apollo ended up stealing. He stole from Gaia after defeating a serpent. Really, he defeated the Pythian priestesses who were devoted to the goddess, and he kind of replaced them with Pythian priestesses who were devoted to him, or the patriarchal pantheon did, because, you know, he's just an archetype. And so I wrote here that we're also having this deeply mystical conjunction being squared by the other side. So just the way I see this is because it's in Gemini, right? So the other side of the story. When you look into the asteroid Pythia, you're only going to really see, priestesses to Apollo. But if you understand the mythology and you dive deeper into it, you can find, obviously, the whole story. I just told you I didn't make it up. It's a thing. And so it's about remembering the other side and ultimately ending the war, right? And all of this stuff, all of these archetypal impulses are coming through our dreams. They're coming through films. They're coming through music. They're coming through symbolism. They're coming through art. And they're stemming from, as you can see, very, very, very distant cycles in our history and also our like mythological history, which ultimately stemmed from our collective unconscious, which Pisces governs. Spiritual Warrior says that she's actually reading an art therapy book and that I want to create a class to help others with the mystical colors and healing. Seriously, that conjunction on the 12th, harness that. Set some intentions about all of the vision that you have right now. I'm realizing like my face is like hardly ever in the camera. I did this in the last video. It was like half my face because I can never see. Anyway, harness it for that. That's a perfect thing to do. Okay. Mercury will conjunct Uranus on the 17th, while sextiling Venus. Mercury conjunct Uranus is electric. It is like erratic and unpredictable, but it's deeply, deeply, deeply plugged into the realm that sits beyond Saturn. the realm that's there to push us forward and awaken us through like electric realizations that are rooted in the future, if that makes sense. And oftentimes when Mercury conjuncts Uranus, we can blast too far out that we can't really make physical whatever sort of like deep insight we just obtained, right? But because this is happening in Taurus, we can solidify it. So if things are happening around the 17th, 18th, that are electric insights, electric knowings, sparks of creativity, things that want to push us forward, lean into them. But find ways to stay grounded. Like really seriously all month, try to find ways to stay grounded. It's hard, I know. Tea really helps. Tea helps a lot. I think tea really helps a lot. I say that, but like, I live off of coffee. Okay. But tea helps. Okay, where am I at, you guys? On the 18th, the sun will square Pluto. So this, again, helps us to penetrate, helps us to dive in deep into our own underworld. Particularly for me, this is in my 8th house. But you'll have to see where Aries falls for you. But Pluto coming into a square with the sun is triggering in a way that makes us transform. It's going to make us take action or seek compromise in order to transform. Ideally, both the house governed by Aries and Capricorn, like simultaneously. But it's going to help us pierce through and see. Okay. The sun will enter Taurus on the 20th, and then we'll really be feeling more grounded, but also more like, you know, Taurus energy sometimes my dad is a Taurus. He's got like a huge Taurus stellium. Sometimes Taurus energy can be like so grounded that they do nothing. You know, Taurus, the like stereotypical lens with which Taurus is usually viewed is like, you know, eating all of your favorite foods and like taking a bath and relaxing and like binging Netflix or reading a good book or like treating yourself. It can be very rooted in that like slower life. But that slower life gives us this ability to ground down and take care of our body. Taurus has a lot to do with our physical reality, and that includes our body image, our self-worth. And as the sun transits Taurus and eclipse season moves through Taurus, the focus is really going to be on building a foundation of security. Whether this be money or resources, that which we need in order to fulfill the vision that Pisces tapped into, the bits of action that Aries sparked into creation. Now we need like a plan. We need the resources that the plan actually comes later. We need the resources in order to instill our plan moving forward. Everybody's having crazy dreams. Yeah. Okay. The sun will conjunct Sophia on the 20th. Oh, so the sun moves into Taurus on the 19th. My bad. The sun will conjunct Sophia on the 20th. In Taurus, the grounded sign of ultimately the Earth Mother. Even though, I mean, we dove into that on Patreon. But, you know, even though it's usually attributed with a masculine bull, it is a feminine earth sign. It is deeply rooted in that, like, feminine cow. and that like Earth Mother archetype, right? And the sun will conjunct Sophia on that day in Taurus. And I almost think that that's like our solar consciousness, which is ultimately what Sophia birthed into existence, giving it the ability to even exist, will be aligning with that like pre-consciousness, that like pre-conscious realm in the physical realm. So it's almost like our masculine consciousness, our feminine unconscious, and the physical are all aligning. I guess we can find ways to kind of take advantage of that. You can find ways to pierce and illuminate the crevices of not only your own unconscious, but the collectives. And in doing so, you can use what you learn in practical ways. Taurus is the most practical sign. So this happening in Taurus means that we're not just going to be shown things in the ethers and just be like, or have them be fleeting, or have them us not be able to hold on to them or use them. This is going to come to really lend practical aid. So pay attention around that time. Okay, Books and Buds live stream is going to be on the 21st. We are going to be diving into this fabulous book from Tavis over on Etheric Circle. The Grail author, Arthur and His Knights, a Jungian symbolic reading. You guys, I've already read this book, and I'm like really excited to read it again because it was really, really, really good. It was really, really, really good. It's probably the best book I've read since Harry Potter. I'm serious. Okay, that's a bold statement. You guys, that was a really bold statement, but I think it's true. Okay. Lots of movement beyond the veil. Yes. Everybody's having crazy dreams. Okay. Books and Buds on the 21st. Mercury will conjunct the North Node on the 23rd. Mercury, our mind, the messenger of the gods, the relayer of information, that planet that helps us process information and learn and understand and think logically and receive the message, will align with first Hecate, the goddess of magic itself, and then the North Node. And it will align with the true North Node. This is the mean North Node. I have to change them. And a very, very, very nice subscriber on here told me how in the comment section last time I complained about this. He was like, oh, you go to this setting and then you do this and this. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank you. And yeah, I didn't do it, but I will at some point. But anyway, Mercury will conjunct the node, the North Node on the 23rd. Pay attention to this, you guys. This day, I highlighted it yellow. This is an important day because this is preparing us for the eclipse season that's right around the corner. Our eclipse will be happening in Taurus at this node. Our first eclipse is a Taurus eclipse, and this node. This is that pathless path. This is a lot of stuff stemming from the past. The South Node eclipses are going to be a lot of stuff stemming from the past in order for us to work through and unlock the wisdom that it holds. This is stuff our soul and our collective hasn't done yet. It's a pathless path. And so Mercury, the messenger coming up to this node prior to eclipse season, is like funneling into our minds a little bit of what this is about, helping us to understand what this path moving forward is going to be about. And so if things happen around this time that seem fated, that seem destined, that seem like they're propelling you towards something bigger and greater, trust it. Trust it. Okay, where am I at? Okay, yeah, that's on the 23rd. So this will actually be happening square Saturn, because Saturn is still square the nodes, and is sextiling Neptune. So when Mercury, the messenger of the gods, aligns with our North Node, that path we're about to trek during eclipse season, that new fated destined path, that look and see where's Taurus, where's this fall in your chart, Mercury's going to come with a message. That message is going to be working harmoniously with the Neptune-Jupiter conjunction. That magical, mystical, creative point of manifestation that we just seeded into being on the 12th. It's going to require some effort because it's a sextile, but it's going to be working harmoniously with that. And this is going to be triggered by Saturn, square Saturn. So Saturn is coming with the triggers, meaning it will require hard work moving forward. We're not going to be able to just flow through this. It's going to require us to stand in our own personal sovereignty and authority and do the legwork. But this creative vision is working harmoniously with our eclipse season quest, if that makes sense. This happens simultaneously with Demeter aligning with Sirius. So the asteroid Demeter is representative of the fertility of the land, the harvest, the earth mother. And Sirius is usually attributed with Isis and more of like the cosmic divine mother in different expressions, right? And these are both aligning inside of Cancer, which governs the mother, literally the mother itself. And so this is having us look towards cycles, okay? So Sirius is the star of initiation. I talk about this all the time. Sirius initiates us into whatever the heck is next. Sirius is the brightest star in our night sky. It's literally the next source of light in order to guide us on this freaking ladder or spiral or whatever it is that is ideally gonna let us out of here someday. Sirius starts to initiate us into that, and it is a light source that is deeply rooted in the feminine. It is an awakened feminine, deeply rooted in like high priestess energy, which is balanced in and of itself. Think of the high priestess card. You have the pillars on either side, the light and dark, and that like middle path. And Sirius is very representative of that path of initiation, right? And being as though the star of initiation is aligned with Demeter throughout this month, it shows us that the initiations revolve around the cycles of fertility in nature. And we will see how that is very much the case as we dive into that slide I have here for Beltane. But it shows us esoterically that our source of initiation right now is the earth mother and her cycles, and finding a alignment between our inner cycles, the earthly cycles, and the cosmic cycles, right? Yeah. I'm not going to cover all of this because I feel like a lot of them are like repeated things that are similar. Like Venus will be squaring Ceres the next day, which is another depiction of Demeter. And so it's showing us that like our values, Venus are being squared off by the same earth mother. And so in order to find balance, which Venus also governs, we have to lean into this deep fertility that this time is offering us. And we'll dive into that here in 1 second. I just want to, let's see. Okay, so on the 27th, Venus will conjunct Neptune. So we had just had the Neptune-Jupiter conjunction. The moon will transit it that same day as well. On the day before, technically the sun transits the day before. So the same day that Venus comes and also a benefic, right? Comes to lend aid and beauty and aesthetic and artistic insight and harmony and balance to this Neptune-Jupiter conjunction, the same time as our moon is there to help us like integrate and reflect and internalize what the fuck this was all about. The same time that happens, which is going to be on the 27th, Mercury will conjunct the Andromeda galaxy. So, wait, where am I at? Mercury, what? That's not the right date. 27th. Mercury is over here. Okay, scratch that. Mercury does not conjunct. It does it way back before that. I'll fix that and I'll send it over. But what it does do, what Mercury does do, is trine Pluto. So Mercury will be, when before I talked about Mercury and Pluto as a square, and so it was very triggering and penetrating, and like we were being triggered in order to like dig deep and pierce through, I mean, the only word coming to me right now is triggers, because that's really what it's going to be, can be conflict, but I mean, it could be conflict. Later, once we enter into the 28th, Mercury will then be trining Pluto. This is harmonious. That means that mental aspect, which is right now grounded in Taurus and aligned with our current soul's mission, where we're supposed to be pushing forward and developing this North Node, will be trining Pluto. So trining the planet that helps it go deep, trining the planet that helps it to see, trining the planet, I need to drink, that helps it transform, that helps it to have a alchemical death and then a birth into something else. And so this is going to be coming around to end, like, remember how I said when Mercury comes around on the North Node, it's going to help us to see what this North Node mission is all about. When it then trines Pluto before the eclipse comes, that will like help it to like even zero in even more, like dive in even deeper, pierce through, penetrate like the detective for clarity, if that makes sense. And this is happening right before Pluto stations retrograde. So please pay attention. On the 28th, pay attention on the 28th. Mercury helps us to understand. Mercury is the receiver of messages. He's the interface between all of these planets and stars and literally every single thing and like our human minds, right? And so Mercury trining Pluto, not only is Pluto going to help Mercury dive deeper into the North Node that this eclipse is going to be about in order to understand this new path, but Mercury is going to be helping Pluto understand, because Mercury helps you understand what this Pluto retrograde is going to be all about. And remember, Pluto is going to be going retrograde right on top of America's natal Pluto. It's going to transit off, and then it's going to transit back on again. I think it hits it 3 times over the coming years. And so we're just starting. This really ignited a lot of things around Russia and Ukraine, and so you can expect that narrative to be coming back through as well. And then also on a collective scale, so much has been happening in this house for you. Okay, Pluto stations retrograde on the 29th, so pay attention on the 28th to kind of get an idea as to what that might be about. And so you can kind of, direct your transformation in the proper direction, I guess. Which brings us to the final day of the month, which is a kicker, you guys. On the 30th, which is my dad's birthday, we have the Taurus partial lunar eclipse. It is also Beltane, which we're going to hop back over to the slides to go over to here in a second. We also have a Venus conjunct Jupiter on that day. This happens once every year and a half, maybe once every 2 years. Don't hold me on this. I'm really bad at knowing the planetary cycle dates. I always just Google it. But this is when both of astrology's benefics, Venus, the planet of love and money, Jupiter, the planet of expansion and growth and optimism and joy, are going to be conjunct in Pisces towards the end degrees of the zodiac, towards the end degrees of everything the zodiac could possibly learn. Venus will be conjunct Jupiter on that day. This is the luckiest transit. This is what also when the sun conjuncts Jupiter, it's also a really lucky transit, but this is a huge, very lucky transit. Unfortunately, it will be falling on an eclipse, and so I do not recommend trying to manifest with it. just try to embody it and be it and exude it and see what is being ignited from this beautiful conjunction at the same time as this Taurus eclipse, which is really going to force us to work through some stuff as well. This is going to be a new moon in Taurus, the sign. Look and see where Taurus governs in your chart, but this is going to be a new moon solar eclipse. So the sun will be blocked out and shadow will be cast upon both the earth and the sun. Ultimately, the sun will be blocked off and a shadow will be cast upon us in order to deal with usually collective karma in order to be propelled forward. So a lot of things come up to be dealt with, but it's almost like we see a lot of chaos in the world because the system tries to fight fate, ultimately. And so when eclipses come, no matter how hard sometimes the powers that be, or even we, try to do the thing that is not supposed to be done, eclipses come to be like, too fucking bad, I'm going to destroy whatever it is you thought you were building because it's not what's supposed to be built. And so it helps us to build what is supposed to be built. And if things are chaotic, just know they hold so much benefit. If this, for any reason, this could be a beautiful eclipse, but if for any reason it's chaotic at all, please just tell yourself this is for my highest fucking benefit. The two beneficial planets are aligning at the same time as this moon. We have this huge Beltane initiatory experience happening in our solar year, which we're going to dive into here right now. And we also have this Taurus lunar eclipse. The same time that the asteroid Ceres is square Saturn. So where is she? She's the right here. Square Saturn. Let's trine Saturn. Oh, it was trine Saturn. Okay, my bad. It's supposed to be trine Saturn. You guys, I tried. Trine Saturn. There's always at least one mistake on this damn chart. So Ceres, the earth mother, the fertility mother, the archetype that literally governs fertility in whether it be childbirth or the land, will be trining, so it's better than what I said here, which is square. It'll be trining Saturn, which if you've followed my work over on Patreon, you know I've also attributed Saturn to that like crone earth mother as well, and the sickle symbol. The symbol of Ceres, which falls here at 23 degrees of Gemini, when it has its glyph, right now, I don't know how to change it to the glyphs, but when it has its glyph, it looks like Saturn, but flipped backwards. They are mirrors of each other, and they're very representative of harvest and the abundance of the land and the produce that it offers us and the ability to, live and be alive and all that jazz. And so this eclipse is deeply, deeply, deeply rooted in the fertility of new life, whether that be this newly conjunction here that is being aspected by Venus at the time of the eclipse, whether it be this eclipse story propelling us forward, whether it be Beltane igniting the fertile grasses and blossoms to bloom, whatever it may be, we are deeply rooted in abundance around this time. And so like a Taurus does so well, find a way to like embody it and live it and exude it and integrate that deep connection to the abundance of the divine during that eclipse rather than trying to manifest anything. And then that's something, once you integrate it into your consciousness, how archetypal astrology works. Once you integrate these things into your consciousness, you then have that within your repertoire. Is that the right word? Whatever. I'm going to roll with it. And it's now part of your archetypal landscape. And so the Taurus eclipse is going to be revolving around embodying abundance in all its forms. That eclipse will be sextile Mars, and so it's going to be working harmoniously with our ability to take action. It will also be conjunct both Uranus and Hecate, which is literally awakening our dormant magical abilities, which stem from abundance themselves. And it will be trine the asteroid Alexandria. And so in doing this, in embodying this sense of, like I'm seeing like a cornucopia, like in embodying this like overflow of like fertility and abundance, we're ultimately tapping into ancient wisdom, which resides within our body, which resides within this universal source of knowledge, which is ultimately abundantful. That's not the right word. Everywhere. It's ultimately everywhere. But we kind of stand in our own way when it comes to tapping into these things. Okay, so that's the month in a nutshell. Okay, let's go back over here, you guys, and let's dive really quick into Beltane. So Beltane is, I celebrate on the 30th. Wiccans celebrate on the 30th, but it's usually attributed with both May Day and Beltane, so some people will celebrate it on the 1st of May, but that's more rooted in the May Day festivals. My dad's birthday is the 30th, so I celebrate it on the 30th. Beltane is actually the midway point between the spring equinox and the summer solstice. It's actually the technical beginning of summer. So Beltane is actually technically when summer begins, and the summer solstice, which is when people think the summer begins, is actually the peak of summer. It's called midsummer. It's the peak of summer. Beltane is actually my dad's birthday, and summer solstice is Eddie's birthday. Somebody close to me is born on every single one of these 8 high holidays, except for one. But I think they might be born one day. I don't know. We'll have to see. Anyway, midpoint between the spring equinox and the summer solstice. Beltane actually marks the emergence of the young god into manhood. So the young god that is sparked at the spring equinox enters into manhood at Beltane, the midway point between the spring equinox and the summer solstice. This young god reaches its peak at the summer solstice when the light is strongest here in the northern hemisphere, of course. This is technically the start of summer, with the summer solstice being its peak, like I said. This is a quote from Scott Cunningham's book on Wicca, I think, and it's chapter on the ritual days. So this is in regards to Beltane. It says, on Beltane, stirred by the energies at work in nature, the young god desires the goddess. They fall in love. They lie among the grasses and the blossoms and unite. The goddess becomes pregnant of the god, and Wiccans celebrate the symbol of her fertility in ritual. They do that often through fire ceremonies, and oftentimes you'll see the maypoles, which represent the phallic symbol, the pole, and the flowers up at the top represent the goddess. It's also said that cauldrons are actually more commonly used than Mayday poles, and the cauldron representing the feminine and everything thrown into it in order to create something representing the masculine. We're going to dive super deep into Beltane for the moon on Beltane. We're going to meet on the 28th. We're going to dive into that and eclipses, because this is actually happening the day of the eclipse. So we have Beltane, this fertility ritual happening, this eclipse happening in Taurus, which is the sign that governs fertility of the land and our physical reality. We have Venus conjunct Jupiter, two of astrology's benefics, helping us to just bring this influx of like cosmic abundance. And then we have Ceres and Saturn, which both govern the harvest, and they're trining each other, so they're working harmoniously, both the feminine expression of that, and then also later Saturn became more patriarchal in origin. But this is happening on the 30th. It's one of the 8 solar yearly holidays that, you know, I'm kind of partial to because everybody I know is born on one of them, but I always try to utilize. These are kind of like, you know how every month we have a new moon and a full moon and we honor the lunar cycles? These are the 8 points on the wheel of the year where we honor the solar cycles. And we'll be diving deeper into this later this month. I pulled some cards. Let's dive into them. And then we'll call it a night. If you guys have any questions, you can write them in the chat. There was like a whole bunch of stuff that I was going to say that I never got around to, but whatever, we're just winging it. I'll come back around in the next videos, I'm sure. It's easier to zero in on the moon videos. I can be way more like focused on those. There's way too much happening in a whole month for my ADD ass to try to be coherent. Okay, so wrong book. We'll do this one first. Okay, so I pulled an archetype card, and when I was shuffling, I was like focusing on, you know, I'm gonna throw so many freaking archetypes at you people. What is the most important one to like lean into and understand as we navigate this? And the card that came out was the animal, which is actually the same card we pulled for the last Books and Buds video. I pulled a card in the beginning. And that story which is here on YouTube, I recommend diving into. It's so perfect for the archetypal energy we've been in and where we're going. That story was very rooted in transmuting and integrating our animalistic, very rooted in Aries energy, instincts to something higher, right? And the card that came out was the animal. So I'm going to go ahead and read this from the book. It says, the beast, the wild one, the she-wolf. We are mammals. The hair on our chest and between our legs reminds us so. We try hard to deny our unrefined animalistic nature, yet, through this archetype, we tap into the power and direction. Activating the animal within means reawakening our relationship with nature in the most broad and embodied sense. Drinking from waterfalls, roaring at the moon, opening our eyes underwater, eating berries from the vine. The life force of our planet begs us to set down the devices, the constraints, and the social constructs, and remember the warm blood that pulses through our veins. The animal longs for breath, food, procreation, and physicality. It wants soil under our nails and starlight on our skin. If this all sounds terribly unsophisticated to you, take note that it is said that when Buddha became enlightened, he roared like a great lion. Notice your resistance to the animal within. Where does it come from? What has kept you from doing what? And let me read this again. Notice your resistance to the animal within. Where does it come from, and what has it kept you from doing, wild one? The animal demands we get comfortable in our own skin. Aries season is all about getting comfortable in our own skin. The minute you accept, express, and celebrate the physical body, which is Taurus, you tap into your animal energy. Taurus is also very rooted in nature as well. It helps to ground that physical identity. I mean, that more fiery, conscious identity of Aries into physicality, into the body. Aries is when we know our mind, and then Taurus is when we really get into our physical body, both of which are very rooted in the animal, right? When this archetype is evolved, it is vital, elemental, alive, it dances. When it's in its lower archetype, it is savagery, pent up emotions, which all of the freaking, I forgot to say this, all of those Pisces things, those can really let through a lot of pent up emotions, particularly the Neptune, Jupiter conjunction, and Venus comes through later. It says, if you want to go deeper, you can listen to the audio recording of Mary Oliver reading Wild Geese. Repeat every morning for 1 week. I have no idea what that is, but it sounds interesting. I'm going to have to look into it. Okay, so then I pulled a card from the Wild Harmonic Oracle, and I was like, okay, animal archetype, all that jazz. Have to integrate it. Has a lot of wisdom for us. How do we do this? And this is the card that came out. Shadow of Spirit. And at the bottom it says not worthy. This card is broken up into all different elements, and then it has like so it has all 4 base elements, and then it has like the celestial realm and the dimensional realm. And this is the dimensional realm, but like the shadow aspect. So it's like the shadow aspect of like the highest realm according to this deck. Shadow of Spirit. As the shadow consumes the spirit of creativity, one's sense of intrinsic value is lost. Taurus season is going to have a lot to do about us reassessing our value and our self-worth and finding it and owning it. So there's going to be a little meditation I'm going to read, and then a little inquiry. Meditation. Feeling that one is not valid is the plague of our times. This card is an indication that one sits in judgment of themselves or others as something lesser than a manifestation of creation playing itself out to see where it goes. Strangely, there is nothing greater nor lesser than creation. So this perceive is always delusional. This person writes so weird. Yeah, I read that right, you guys. That's what that says. Okay. When I take my place in the presence of eternity, it is not about being powerful enough to be worthy of it. It is about recognizing that being powerful enough to be worthy of it is the only way that anyone could ever be. Inquiry. What judgments have I passed on myself and others that are blocking my creativity? The end. Okay. Thanks, guys. Have a great month. Those of you, let me go over here so I can see your guys'. Those of you over on all those books, you guys, there's so many books everywhere. Those of you who are over on Patreon, like seriously, my books are like literally everywhere. Okay. Anyway, those of you who are over on Patreon have access to the PDF. We're going to meet later this month. The next time we meet is going to be on the 14th. That's going to be for the Libra moon. We're going to dive into Andromeda and black holes and probably a whole bunch of other stuff. Then we're going to meet for Books and Buds on the 21st, and we're going to dive into that Jungian symbolic reading of the Arthurian legends, which is like my jam, you guys. I'm like low-key obsessed with Arthurian legends. I have been like my whole life. What that stems from, but it's like, it's pretty bad. It's like one of my biggest obsessions. And I have a lot of them. And so we're going to do that on the 21st. And then on the 28th, we're going to meet for the solar eclipse. That day, we're going to dive into eclipses and Beltane Fire Festival. And my dog is like, okay, it's time to go. Can you sit down? I'm almost done. And then on the 24th, so the weekend before that, we're going to do Cosmic Kids. We're going to do some sort of crafting. I'm not sure, but we'll talk about that over on Discord. Have a great night, guys. I will see you on the 14th over on Patreon. And those of you over here on YouTube, you can join Patreon for as little as $3 a month, and you gain access to all the videos. And the link is down below. And also, I always forget to do this. Can you guys like this video? And of course, I wait till the last second. Nobody ever makes it to the end. Although some of you guys do, and I appreciate you so much. Can you like this video and subscribe to my channel? Because apparently I'm a YouTuber now, and that's something I'm supposed to ask you to do. Thank you. Have a great night. Bye, guys. I always cut myself off. I'm letting myself finish talking.